Cool. So I'm joined today by Ella and Kate, founders of Also Known As. Would it be possible for you to quickly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ella Callan, and I'm a co-founder of Also Known As.
And I'm Kate Parkinson, also co-founder of Also Known As.
And as I understand, you both had careers in journalism prior to founding Also Known As. So what were your respective paths from those careers to where you are today?
Yeah, we sort of joke that we're recovering journalists, actually. But when you think about it, telling risky kind of stories in really innovative ways has sort of always been at the centre of whatever we do. Kate and I started working together in the jungles of Myanmar more than a decade ago. We were both foreign correspondents working on the front lines of really violent conflicts, of natural disasters, and we co-founded Also Known As in order to transform the way that journalists prepare for risks before they go out into the field.
And our journey here really started back in 2011 when I was reporting in Libya during the civil war, and my husband, also my cameraman, was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade and really seriously injured. And despite having had plenty of training, in that moment I completely froze and didn't know what to do. Happy to say Olivier made a full recovery. Sometimes forget to mention that. But from that moment on, I knew there had to be a better way to train journalists so they were better prepared physically and emotionally for the risks they may face.
So the training that journalists do evolved. It's called HEFAT training, hostile environment and first aid training. And it evolved out of the Gulf War. And it really sort of hasn't changed a lot since then. It's run by former soldiers. We felt as women in this industry that it really needed disrupting. It just really didn't meet our needs and the needs of the modern journalist. Things like cybersecurity, things like covering protests on the street. We initially got some funding from Innovate UK to test our assumptions and speak to a diverse range of journalists, of trainers, and of news organisations. We actually found that the situation was worse than we thought. Journalists sometimes aren't doing training, especially freelance journalists. They don't update their skills or refresh them regularly enough. The training that's happening doesn't reach everyone and isn't really fit for purpose. So I'd started experimenting with VR and documentary storytelling in 2017. And Kate and I started producing some creative content together, which was funded by the Google Digital News Initiative. We then sort of put two and two together and thought that a great way to use virtual reality would be to train our peers for high pressure situations like the ones that Kate had faced.
Because VR for us just felt like a really obvious solution for this industry that was ripe for innovation. Not only is VR more impactful and more immersive than sitting in a classroom, but we could reach journalists where they are. And of course, now with COVID and traditional training just not happening, the need for training that can be delivered on demand, meeting journalists where they are, so they're able to train at a time that's most convenient for them, has never been more apparent.
So journalists, unfortunately, are facing an augmentation in risks throughout the world. Can you say a little bit, you mentioned how their current training is inadequate at preparing for these risks. Can you say a little bit more just about how VR is the effective tool to mitigate these risks and what that can really look like in practice?
So I already mentioned a few reasons why we think VR is the solution, because it's more immersive. We can take the training to them rather than the traditional model, which requires journalists to leave the newsroom, travel to a training location for up to 5 days at a time. But also there is a growing body of research that shows just how much better training in virtual reality can be. It's up to 70% more effective and more memorable than traditional learning methods like video. So we think there are a lot of reasons why virtual reality is an ideal solution for innovating this training space.
One thing that's really exciting about what we're doing, we're part of an Innovate UK Smart Grant, where we're investigating how biometric data can be used both to track progress over time in virtual environments, but also to influence the outcome of different narratives in VR. And we really see this as the key to scaling our business beyond content creation and also beyond just the media as well.
So when you say responding to biometric data, is that just keeping track of how the person is physically responding to the training and adapting the course? Awesome.
Yeah, so for instance, our first product is around a protest, journalists covering a protest, and we've seen that there is a need for this kind of training. You need to only look at the Black Lives Matter protests in the US. Nearly 500 reports of aggressions against journalists were happening. But even before that, because of our needs assessment and because we've been working so closely with the users, we knew that this was a real gap in training. So we place the journalists in a protest environment where they have to make choices and decisions. They might be able to look back at how they reacted. And we're tracking things like heart rate, eye tracking, galvanic skin response, which is sweat, breathing, to see what these triggers of stress are and how people might be able to improve over time as they build resilience in virtual environments.
Amazing.
And then as we develop the product, sort of the next stage, which Ella sort of intimated, is that we use that data to influence the environment so that if the participant remains calm, the experience develops in one way, but if they become stressed, the experience develops in another, and using that biometric data to make the experiences really tailored to the individuals so that the learning is really personal and really impactful.
Oh, fantastic. So you said a little bit about the protest training as a case study of the product. Whereabouts are you at with the product development and planning oneself into the boots of a trainee journalist? Like, what would the experience be like for somebody going through that?
We're heads down in development at the moment. We've just finished a development sprint where we created an audio version of the experience that was largely inspired by the constraints of COVID and the inability to work with our developers closely and to get the experience in headsets out to journalists to test with them. So we just finished a really successful development sprint where we tested with this audio only version, and we're really, the research question was, can we get people's hearts racing, albeit anecdotally, because physiological reactions is such a core piece of the work that we're doing, and we had really great results. So we've now made some adaptations to our script. We were in the last few weeks doing motion capture asset collection. Then now slowly after COVID, things are starting to open up. That was possible, but it had many challenges. We had to work with actors who lived together so we could have, contact during the performance. But that's now happened. And for the next 2 months, we're going to be really in a big development sprint to get our prototype finished. And then in the latter months of the year, we'll be carrying out testing with our target clients, people that we've been co-designing this product with from the start and who've been very close with us. Some really major news organizations, all of which are really interested in what we're doing.
We're working with CNN, BBC, ITN, Reuters, Vice, and AFP in France. They're sort of really closely aligned with what we're doing. What's really different about our training is that it's very far from the kind of hyper-realistic sort of point-and-click trainings that you often see in VR. The characters and environment are really much more creative and minimalist, but highly evocative. So we're using 3D sound, as Kate described, we've been testing that 3D audio, that spatialized audio. We're using color, we're using motion capture, and it really brings to life this increasingly hostile situation that's evolving around you in the virtual environment. So you feel what it's like to be there immersed in that crowd and have to make split-second decisions as people are confronting you. And, you know, of course, in the virtual world, mistakes are free. So, you know, it's being able to have the ability to kind of rewind, if you like, and have a look at what you did, analyze your behavior and your emotional reactions at key moments. And this helps journalists, we hope, to prepare them for these kind of scenarios in real life where they can, you know, think logically, make better decisions, but also build resilience and confidence.
Just to add to that, we're really aware that we're putting people in high stress situations. And although that is, you know, part of the course of being a journalist, VR is a highly evocative medium. And so we're hopefully later this year or early next year embarking on a research study to analyse the ethical considerations of putting people into these high stress scenarios and to develop a very comprehensive scaffolding around the experience to make sure that we have really robust onboarding and offboarding procedures in place to make sure that if anybody's triggered by the experience, there are steps in place to really offer people support.
It sounds like there's some really exciting development steps on the immediate horizon for you. Looking a bit more to the long term, what scope is there for this product, also known as beyond journalism?
Well, really, anyone who does this kind of hostile environment training will, you know, see the benefits of what we're doing once we've rolled out with major news organisations. You know, everyone from NGOs to diplomats to humanitarian workers, disaster responders, they all do a very similar version of this type of training. We're going to open a seed round in 2021, which will fund the production of other modules on our platform and help us to bring our tech team in-house. So we're looking to engage with people who would be value add, who would help us scale really rapidly off the back of our Innovate UK grant at the end of the year, particularly investors with immersive industry expertise. And, you know, we're looking to talk to people who can help us do that.
Brilliant. And on that note, really, with respect to the different kind of challenges and tasks you have up ahead, how can people get involved with making a success of Also Known As, whether it's users, investors, connection builders?
We're definitely not short of users. Our background in journalism means we have a really huge network to test with, but really we are always looking to expand our network with people who share our values. So that's the most important thing for us. As Ella said, we're keen to engage with investors in this space, not only working in the immersive space, but also given our beachhead market being the media and given the precarious state of the media at the moment, particularly in the days of Donald Trump, where the media is painted as being the enemy of the people and the threat that that poses to the democracies that we certainly in the West seem to take for granted. We're really looking to engage with people who share our values in trying to protect the institution of journalism and the democracies that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, I alluded at the start of the call to our time working together as in Myanmar. In many ways, for Kate and I, it feels like we've sort of come full circle, because in those days, Myanmar was a military dictatorship. Journalists weren't allowed. We were sneaking across the border, running around hiding cameras and trying to get word out about what was happening in that country to the world. So, you know, we really know what it feels like to live in a world without journalists, and no one wants that. But, you know, the pressures on the industry, be it monetary, be it being targeted for being fake news, or be it this, you know, general perception that the press is, you know, being undermined and their credibility undermined. You know, we want journalists everywhere to be able to have access to training that protects them physically and emotionally for today's world. And as Kate said, we really believe in journalists being able to speak the truth, in being able to report, and in being more resilient in doing so, because really the future of our democracies depend on it.
Oh, it was fantastic learning about Also Known As, and thank you so much for your time. And
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.